All right, here we're going to look at solving absolute value inequalities. And what that means is you have they look like equations, except the only difference is there's no equal sign. It's either a less than or a greater than type sign. So a little bit of vocab / notation first. If we're dealing with a greater than or equal to sign, this is considered an or situation, is what it's called. And that means you shade all that applies. If it's a less than or equal to sign, this is called an and situation, and that's where you shade the overlap. When we get into this a little bit more later, the greater than or equal to, less than or equal to, when you do shading on a number line, you're going to do a closed circle. If it's greater than or less than, you're going to do an open circle. We'll get into that in a little bit here. A little thing that I learned back in my high school days was great or than. So it's an or situation if it's greater than, and less than. Obviously, terrible grammar there, but it helps me remember which one's an or and which one's an and. All right. Let's look at a couple basic examples, and then we'll get into some more that require a little bit of work. If the absolute value is less than 3, numbers that are less than 3 are 2, 1, 0, -1, but we can't have absolute value be negative, so it's really 0, 1, or 2. Now, you could do decimals like 2.5, 2.9, 2.999, stuff like that. So basically, as long as it's less than 3, not including 3, so it's going to be an open circle. That means less than 3, not including it. Or, sorry, it means not including 3. So it's going to be between 3 and 0. However, if we go to -3, any of these values between 0 and -3, their absolute value is also going to be less than 3. Anytime you get anything out here or here, the absolute value is going to be bigger than 3, so those are not going to be included. So the numbers that work for this inequality, and inequality just means it's got a less than or greater than sign, are the ones between -3 and 3. Any number you put into this inequality will make it work out. Let's go back to my green. All right, so on this other one, which absolute values are going to be bigger than -3? Well, we don't have to do a whole lot of solving here. We can just say we know this is always going to be positive. So that means that it's always going to be bigger than -3. So if we kind of do our, -3, let's see, and 3 like we did before, here's 0, really the whole number line is going to be shaded in. And I might come back and readdress this a little bit later on why the whole thing's shaded in. But just a reminder, this is or, so it's a greater than. On the other one, it's less than, so it's an and situation. And this means overlap, or means shade all that applies. We'll get into that when we're solving these, just to kind of show you what that means. Okay, this is a less than symbol right here, so this is going to be an and situation, which means we're looking for overlap. When we solve these, as long as the stuff inside the absolute value here is less than 4, or it could be smaller than negative, well, it could be bigger than -4 technically, because like -3 is bigger than -4. But if its absolute value is smaller than 4, then it works. So when we solved just the equations, we would write two separate equations. X plus 2 is less than or equal to 4. And then x plus 2 is greater than or equal to -4. Because anything that's bigger than -4, like -3, -2, -1, 0, those would also work for this, as long as it doesn't get, more than 4. So we're just going to solve each of these. We would do -2 here. We get x is less than or equal to 2. -2, x is greater than or equal to -6. Since it's an and situation, we're going to shade the overlap. we have -6, we have 2, 0 would be somewhere around here just for reference. It's greater than or equal to, so it includes -6, and we're going to shade that way. It also, so we kind of took care of that one there. The x is less than or equal to +2, it includes 2, and we're going to shade to the left because it's less than or equal to, so we just shade the overlap, which would be this stuff in here. What this means is any number in this shaded area, if I plug it in, like let's say -4. If I put -4 in here for x, -4 plus 2 is -2. The absolute value of that is indeed -4. If I try any number out here, like let's say -10, if I plug that in, it shouldn't work. If I put -10 in for x, -10 plus 2 is -8. The absolute value of -8 is 8. 8 is not less than 4. So all of these shaded numbers in the middle here, those numbers would work for this situation, including -6 and including 2 because it's less than or equal to. All right, let's get into a few more. We'll kind of get a little more procedural. This is greater than, so it's going to be an or situation. So we don't have to worry about overlap here. So to solve this, you just write it normally, and then you write the other one with the other sign and make it opposite. All right, so that's how you set up each of these. I'm going to add 3 to both sides. We get x is greater than 13. We'll add 3 here, and we get x is less than -7. So -7's here, 13's here, 0 would be somewhere around here. This one you don't have to worry about the overlap. -7 we're going to shade to the left. If it's an or situation, you just shade all that applies. 13 we're going to shade to the right because it's greater than. All right, so once again, notice it's open circle because it's not less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. It's just the greater than and less than. All right, we got 2 more we're going to work through. These are slightly different because there's some stuff going on here. We can't split it up into 2 inequalities yet because there's some stuff in the way. So we're going to undo the -6 by doing +6. And we get -12. And then I want to undo the -3, so I'm going to divide by -3 because it's multiplying. So to cancel out multiplying, I'm going to divide. I get absolute value of x plus 2. Now what happens here is whenever you divide by a negative, that sign flips. So the less than becomes a greater than. I'm not going to get into the whole why now, but you can just trust me on that. When you divide by a negative or multiply by a negative, the sign's going to flip. Now is when we can break it up into 2 separate inequalities. X plus 2 is greater than 4. X plus 2 is less than -4. This is a greater than. That means we're dealing with an or situation. And it's important that I kind of point this out. We started with a less than, so you'd think, well, then it's an and situation, less than. But at the point in which you split it, that's when you decide if it's an or an and situation. In this case, it's an or, which means we're just going to shade. We're not going to worry about any overlap. All right, so subtract 2, we get x is greater than 2. And we're going to subtract 2 here. We get x is less than -6. If I mark this number line, -6, +2, there's 0 just for reference. Greater than 2, open circle, shade to the right. Less than -6, open circle, shade to the left. So once again, what this means is any number in that shaded area, if you plug it into the original one, it should check out. So if I want to check one here, I'll check, let's just try 3. That's in my shaded area. If I put a 3 in here, 3 plus 2 is 5. The absolute value of that is 5. 5 times -3 is -15. Negative 15 minus 6 would be negative 21, and that is indeed less than negative 18. And you could test any number in the shaded area. You could try negative 7 here and plug it in. And trust me, it does work. Okay, last one we're going to do together. I'll grab my green pen again. Same idea. This is 6 minus absolute value 2x minus 6 is greater than or equal to negative 14. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 6 here. And I get negative absolute value of 2x minus 6 is greater than or equal to negative 20. Now be careful here. We don't need to switch the sign even though we did negative 6 on both sides. We only switch the sign when we divide or multiply by a negative, not subtract a number. So we're going to divide by negative 1 to cancel out this minus here. We're going to do that to this side. Now, indeed, we are going to switch the sign because we divided by a negative number. All right, so let's split it. We got 2x minus 6 is less than or equal to 20, and 2x minus 6 is greater than or equal to negative 20. And we solve each one. Plus 6 on both sides. 2x is less than or equal to 26. Divide by 2. We do not need to flip the sign because we're not dividing by a negative. All right, same idea here. We're going to add 6 on both sides. 2x is greater than or equal to negative 14. Divide by 2. And we get x is greater than or equal to negative 7. So when we split it, it was a less than situation. So that means it's an and situation. Less than is and. So we've got negative 7, positive 13. 0 would be somewhere around here. We are including negative 7 and shading to the right because it's greater than. For 13, we're including 13. We're shading to the left because it's less than. So that means wherever they overlap, we're going to shade, which would be right in the middle. If they never overlapped, then your answer would be no solution. You wouldn't shade anything. But since these overlapped, we shaded in the middle. All right, so a lot of stuff to keep track of. Just remember, whenever you split it, look at the sign. If it's greater than, it's an or. If it's less than, it's an and. Remember, or means you just shade. You don't worry about overlap. And means it has to overlap, and you shade the overlap. All right, hopefully it helped with absolute